Men, I'm speaking to those that didn't get the chance to come out to the Cross Training Ministries partner meeting last Saturday. Some of you guys don't live in Covington, Louisiana, but you are interested in the ministry, you've been involved with the ministry, whether as a donor or a participant or helping to find opportunities at churches. Whoever you are guys that are interested and invested in this ministry. And so what I wanted to do is just record a video, a shorter presentation, so that you could have a sense of really what this ministry is right now and where it's going. I am more excited than ever by Cross Training Ministries, and I think there's good reason for you to be excited as well. Now, I want to begin with a problem that I've been grappling with for the last 3.5 years since I started this ministry. And it's the problem that a lot of Christian men are not spiritually fit to be effective servants of God. Now, when you hear me say that, I've got to be careful with what I mean by fitness, because fitness is one of these concepts that brings up different images in our minds. Some are helpful, some are unhelpful. So when I talk about men not being spiritually fit, I'm using that image of fitness. Here's what I don't mean. We all have been to some gym and seen that the sort of gym rat that is there all the time. He's somehow finds time to work out 2-3 hours a day, has huge muscles, likes looking at himself, likes being able to just lift heavy weights, but maybe for his day job he's an accountant. And so it's not like he really needs this strength for his work. It's a hobby. It's something that he does and enjoys, but has no real effective purpose in terms of his everyday life. Now, I'm not saying that that's wrong, but that's not how I want us to think about fitness. When we think about fitness, I want us to realize that fitness is the capacity to do work. It is, if you think, people are in a state of being diseased, healthy, or fit. And physical trainers are always trying to move people toward that goal of being fit and really fit for the life that they live out. So when we think about fitness, think of a man like a fireman. Somebody who needs a level of health and fitness in order to complete his job. If you're a fireman, you're not guaranteed to be fit, but if you're not fit, it's going to hinder the job that you have. If a house is on fire, you've got to carry out a woman or a child. You need physical stamina. You need physical strength. And so fitness is what prepares you for that work. And that's how I think about spiritual fitness. The fact is that as Christians and as Christian men, we have roles and responsibilities that we didn't choose, that we already find ourselves within. We're dads, we're husbands, we're already on a job site. And you can either be fit and ready and able to do that work in a way that honors God, or you can be in a state that you're ill-equipped. And so, when we talk about spiritual fitness, we want guys to be doing the basic things, the things that can't be left undone, because if they are left done, they're not going to be able to be the dads, the husbands, the church members, the workers, the evangelists, whatever other callings they have. They're not going to be able to do those things effectively. Now, when you look out, I don't think I'm being unkind to say that a lot of Christian men, they're not there. They don't have that basic state of spiritual health to really be able to do these roles well. But what I want us to recognize is it's not just an individual problem. It's not like men are just lazy, and if they could just muster up the initiative, they could get the job done. There's an individual component, but there's also a more systemic element. The fact is that you can set up programs that either help men succeed, to grow in their calling, and to become stronger in their faith, and to be more disciplined in some of the spiritual practices they need to do, or you can set up programs that really do not help men much at all. And again, I don't think I'm being cruel or unkind if I say that most discipleship is just ineffective. It's not setting men up. And if we were to think about why that is, let me just list some reasons. One reason is that most men's discipleship is just too comfortable. What is men's discipleship? What are the things that come to mind when you think of men's discipleship? Things like this. There's the men's breakfast. There's the Bible study that you just show up and somebody talks to you about whatever passage is being considered. There's the service project. If you're in South Louisiana like me, maybe there's a hurricane and you go and try to rebuild a home or a church. And then there's always the retreat. You go off for a few days at a nice location. These are all good things, but they all have something in common. They work with where men are already comfortable. Take even the service project. Most guys are very comfortable picking up a drill or picking up a hammer and doing something like that. None of these things really challenge men to go outside their comfort zone, and it doesn't matter what part of life you're thinking about. whether it's just learning, whether it's physical challenges, to your body. It's when we get pushed beyond what we're comfortable with, outside the status quo, that's where we see growth. And these, typical men's discipleship activities, they just don't do that. Another problem is they're too limited. I think they fall prey to what I call the 3% rule. Most discipleship only touches 3% of a man's life. What is discipleship? Again, you read your Bible, you pray, that's about it. But the problem is 97% of a man's life is not engaged with those kinds of activities. And so often, discipleship just leaves everything in place. It just tries to add one or two elements. And the difficulty is it's that 97% that is so formative. And so if you're not helping men actually adjust their lifestyle more broadly, rarely do they have the freedom to do even the basic things like reading their Bible that they would like to do, that we would like to see them do. Another problem is really most men's discipleship is just too random. It follows the logic really of the cafeteria. When I was a student, probably the same as yourself, in grammar school and high school, this is about how sophisticated the strategy of this cafeteria was. Somebody would say, well, we had lasagna yesterday, and we had spaghetti the day before that. So what should we plan for tomorrow? Well, we've not had ham sandwiches in a week, so let's do ham sandwiches again. And if you think about it, a lot of discipleship, it's the same way. It's like, well, we did Philippians, we've done an epistle, we've done a gospel, we've not done the Old Testament, let's do that. And the problem is there's no sense of a strategic attempt to push men and push Christians toward any objectives, any sense of what real holiness or spiritual health or whatever you want to call it would look like. Go back to the cafeteria. In an ideal situation, you'd have somebody saying, hey, look, what are the needs of students in order for them to be healthy, and planning strategically to give them the food, the nutrients, the protein, everything else that they need in order to be able to think clearly, study well, and do the academics and the athletics and everything else that they need to do. And the same sort of strategy, I think, ought to be evident in discipleship. Another problem, typically discipleship, it's just too independent. I'm a pastor, so here's what makes me feel good. At the start of the year, I print off a bunch of Bible reading plans. I hand them out to all of my members, and I say, go follow this plan for the next year. This is our challenge for our church. We're going to read through the Bible in a year. We're going to read through the New Testament, whatever it is. I've given you your sheet of paper, and now, like Pilate, I can wash my hands, be cleared of your blood, and if you fail, that's on yourself. And that's the way a lot of discipleship works. So again, maybe there's a plan, but there's no structure around the plan to provide any kind of accountability or any kind of motivation to continue along it. Another problem would just be that most discipleship is just too cheap. There's an unspoken assumption behind so much modern discipleship. Nobody would ever say this, but if you really think about it, step back, it's true. And is that actually being a Christian is pretty easy. At the point, maybe not initially, because you've still got all your bad habits, but at the point that you learn, to avoid, say, pornography, and you're not getting drunk in public, and you learn how to have a regular quiet time and show up at church most weeks, well, really there's nothing else to be done. You've now mastered the Christian faith, and so why not try something else more interesting like jiu-jitsu? And the fact is, there's enough in Christianity that if we had 1,000 years, we could still be inspired day after day. There's always more to learn, always areas to grow, always ways of being challenged. Holiness just encompasses the whole of life. It encompasses God's creation. It cannot be exhausted. And so there's just something too small, something too cheap about how we think of discipleship. And so if you think of, just all of what I'm saying about the systemic problem, if you really want to boil it down, I think it comes to this. There's what I call a 40-year-old dad test. The 40-year-old dad test is that, by the time a man is 40 years old, at that point, he's probably married, he probably has children, his job has gotten really busy, he's probably been asked to volunteer on a board or at church, in some capacity, and he's probably, coaching soccer or football or some sport on Saturdays. He's got all of that going on at the very time where his body is starting to lose some of the energy that it had when he was a younger man. And so, if I'm a pastor and I go to a 40-year-old dad and I say, hey, I'd love for you to come to my men's breakfast, really what that dad should say is, well, can you just tell me why I should go? What effect is this going to have? How do I know this is not just going to be another drain? Is it going to be worth showing up? And the sad truth is, I think often there's not an answer. Or if there is an answer, it's the one that we don't want to hear as pastors. It's that what we're offering is not really worth the investment. It's not going to do much for men. And the sad thing is, I really don't think it needs to be this way. Now, I want to be honest and admit that there's something that none of us can do. None of us can change the heart of anybody else. So that most important step that any man is going to have to take will have to come from himself. It'll have to be of the Spirit. But what we can do is we can set things up well. Make it as easy as possible for him to succeed. And he may still not provide that commitment that he has to provide, but nonetheless, we've done our job and we can have a good conscience. And I think that's where we want to leave men. Now, let me give you a thought. I don't think this is a ridiculous thought. I think this is something that is entirely possible. What if you could go up, I'm talking about you, I don't know if you're a pastor, I don't know if you're just a layman, but all of us have this task of being involved in the lives of other men. What if you could go up to another man and you could say to him, look, I've got a program I'd love for you to try. It's not intensive. I'm not going to ask for an hour every day out of your time. Really, it's going to take 15 minutes in the morning. It's going to take 15 minutes in the evening. It's going to take probably about 30 minutes on a Sunday other than going to church. But if you follow this program, in 18 months, how does it sound to have chapters of the Bible memorized? I mean, I know that sounds impossible because you don't like to memorize things, but if you do this, you can have chapters of the Bible memorized. If you do this, you will read through the Bible, but not just read through the Bible like some sort of goal that you finish and then stop. You're going to be on pace, and you're going to read it again and again and again through life. If you do this program, that stack of books on your nightstand, that people give you Christian books, you stick them there, you always have good intentions, but you never get through any of them. Well, you can actually read through all those books, and you're going to be asking people for good recommendations for new books. If you do this program, your prayer life, it's not going to be amazing. I'm not going to, promise you that you're going to be like, George Mueller in terms of your prayer life. But nonetheless, you won't be ashamed. It won't be as if it's non-existent or like it's just 2-minute, request here and there. You're going to actually begin to pray through areas of life that you've not prayed through before. And, I can't promise this, but I think the byproduct of the program will probably be that you'll be a better dad, a better husband, a better servant of Christ in those roles and responsibilities that you have. I mean, how does that sound? If you could say that to a man, what do you think he would say? Personally, I think he'd be interested if he's a Christian man. And I think that's the offer that I think Cross-Training Ministries can help you make. Now, I want everybody to know, just how I got involved with this ministry. Really, going back, I was born into a family that I think one of the things that made it special, none of us choose the families that we're born into, but it was a family where there were men who discipled men. And so I had a set of uncles, all of them who were deeply involved in this work. And so it's something that from a young age I observed. And I think my own testimony, I don't have a testimony where I have, some remarkable story of coming out of some particular type of sin and some sort of awakening in that sense. It's really been a progressive movement of God just grabbing hold of my heart, me getting taste of His holiness and thinking, man, this is what I want to pursue. And my own quest in life just being, how do you live a life of wholehearted discipleship in the 21st century? Or earlier on, in the 20th century, but just in this modern environment that there's such a challenge. I mean, even if you have the heart and want to do it, it's like everything's in the world makes it difficult to pursue. And so that's my own desire, my own quest that I continue to ask and to think about all the time. Now, in terms of this ministry, Cross-Training Ministries, it really goes back to me once I was in a pastoral role, finally sitting down with men. And I wanted to invest in men. I had men showing up at church every week, and so I would dedicate even an hour every week to particular men to read the Bible. And the frustration I found is that somehow, even though that's a significant investment, somehow it was just not enough. Guys could sit in church once or twice on a Sunday. We could meet for an hour one-on-one or in a small group, and it might keep them barely alive, but it wasn't producing the kind of transformation that I longed to see and that I felt like as a pastor, I was called to help guys pursue. And so three and a half years ago, came back to South Louisiana and began to build this ministry, Cross-Training Ministries, and really over that time have been thinking about what does it take to set men up in this modern context. So how do we keep the basics that are always there, but then how do we arrange them and set men up so that they're also adjusting their lifestyle to be able to really put Christ first? And the program I want to talk to you about, which is really becoming the focus, the mission, the bread and butter of what Cross-Training Ministries does, is the product of trying multiple things hopefully improving over time, and I'm pretty excited about where things are right now. So let me just jump. We've talked about the problem. Let me just jump to what I want to talk to you about more specifically, which is the mission of Cross Training Ministries. And the mission of Cross Training Ministries is to train men in spiritual fitness. You've got to keep in mind what I said earlier about fitness. Fitness is not about, spiritual fitness being able to perform in some sort of Bible trivia setting or, having some monk-like existence. It's not the equivalent of just being able to sit in the gym and flex in the mirror or being able to lift a lot of weight. What we're talking about is the capacity to live out our roles and responsibilities in a way that honors God. And what we are trying to do is to help men be spiritual fit in that sense. And I think it's important to know and to hear that mission because it clarifies a lot of what Cross Training Ministries does not do. There are a lot of good, essential aspects of discipleship that are simply outside of that mission. What are they? We don't focus on theological training. It's not that's not important. It is important, but there are seminaries that do that well, and most churches have some effort to train men within some system of theological thinking. But we're focused on, if you think of just an analogy, if I was a trainer in a gym, I'm not going to try to school people and fill their mind with all of the background information of a specific method of training. Rather, I'm going to make sure that they're doing cardio, I'm going to make sure they're doing resistance training, and that they're doing flexibility exercises. And those are the things to make sure that they are in the basic health that they need. And so we don't focus on theological training. We don't focus on counseling. Again, all of us are going to find moments where we are wounded, we're hurt, that we need either counseling or therapy. But again, there are other organizations that do that. Cross Training Ministries, we don't focus on mission and service projects. There's a wonderful way of doing discipleship where you take men out on mission. And I think churches should often think about how to do that. But again, if I was a trainer in a gym, I probably wouldn't take you and say, hey, look, I want to go visit Los Angeles to see some special gym where people work out, and to take you there. Rather, I would be trying to get you in and make sure you get your workout in a given week. And that's the kind of basic ministry that we provide. And likewise, special retreats. All of these things, they're good, they need to be done, but Cross Training Ministries is about men doing the equivalent of cardio, resistance, flexibility, diet, sleep, that sort of thing. So what's distinctive about how we disciple? Let me talk about some things I think are very important and are often overlooked when it comes to discipleship. One thing is that Cross Training Ministries seeks to be holistic, not atomistic. Earlier I mentioned that often we reduce discipleship to just a handful of activities. It's just reading your Bible. It's just spending time in prayer, going to church, going to small group, maybe fasting, other spiritual disciplines. And all of those just break life into small atoms and just focus on a few of them. And Cross Training Ministries is seeking to be more holistic. I don't have my phone actually next to me, but if I did, I would just show it to you. But if you think about it, what effect does our smartphone have on our discipleship? How deeply does it influence our capacity to focus our attention, to live a life of prayer, to live a life of intentional focus at all? It has fundamentally changed our life in the last 10, 15 years. And so I'm convinced that if you don't give a Christian man a plan for how to use his phone well, then don't be surprised if he's not able to do some of the other things that you would like him to do. And so it's not just about the specific quote-unquote spiritual things, but more holistically thinking, how do we arrange life so we're free for discipleship? Another thing that's distinctive about Cross Training Ministries is we focus on habits, not intentionality. Intentionality is such a buzzword. Everybody loves talking about it in churches. There's intentional parenting, and there's intentional marriages, and there's intentional, spiritual disciplines, whatever. You can find that adjective on just about every noun that happens within a church. And the problem is this: habits eat intentionality for breakfast. They just do. Most of our life is lived non-consciously. And so, when we set habits up, they enable us to go beyond where intentionality will tend to take us. And so what we're trying to do is set up habits. This is something long ago that I thought deeply about. I took a somewhat different route through seminary, but part of the reason was I saw so many men that go into seminary, spend 4 years learning Greek, and then 4 years later they'd forget it. And so the question in my mind is, how do you create a lifestyle such that 20 years down the road, you're not just continuing to use Greek, but you're still getting better at Greek. And I think it's that kind of question. How do you do small steps that if you consistently practice them over time can do unbelievable change? And so to give an example, what would happen if you as a man decided that you were going to spend 15 minutes every day memorizing Scripture? If you did that for the next 25 years, how much of the New Testament, how much of the Psalms could you have memorized? It would be unbelievable, and that's a very small investment. Something else distinctive. Cross-Training Ministries, we don't focus on teaching well as much as on learning well. There's a fallacy of learning, and we all experience it. Anytime you pick up an editorial, maybe you pick up an editorial and it's on some obscure war happening on the other side of the world, and you read it and it's really compelling, and you think, this person, they're so right, their position makes so much sense. And then if somebody walks up to you and says, okay, you read that editorial article, could you explain to me, what your position on that particular war is? And your mind goes blank. And the problem is, it was taught so well, it was so lucid while you read it, but nothing stuck. There's nothing actually in your mind that you can usefully put into any kind of practice. And that often happens. This is the danger of a great sermon, is it's so easy to listen to, but it asks so little of you that you really retain nothing from it. And so what we're focused on is we want learning well. That's the priority, what you can take away. And so, at meetings that I lead for Cross-Training Ministries, I don't care that men walk away and think that the meeting was sensational. If you've ever been to men's breakfast and there's been a speaker at a men's breakfast, the speakers that always get the most praise are the ones with the best anecdotes. And yet if you ask people later what those anecdotes were meant to illustrate, there's a good chance that they have no clue. And so it was fun to listen to, but it really had no benefit in terms of your spiritual life. We're not after that. That's why our weekly meetings, the main focus is they make sure you get done what you need to get done through the week that's going to have the biggest impact on your life. So they're going to make sure, for example, that you memorize Scripture, that you do your reading, those sorts of things. Cross-Training Ministries, our discipleship, it's embodied, it's not Gnostic. There's always that danger in discipleship to focus exclusively on ideas and to neglect the importance of the body. And this really hinders the spiritual life of a lot of men. Just to give you a very practical example, all of us who have kids probably struggle with being irritable, being angry. Now, that's a heart issue. I don't want to deny that at all. It's fundamentally a heart issue. You've got to deal with anger at that level. However, a lot of men are naive. A lot of men, they don't get enough sleep. They're getting 5.5, 6 hours of sleep. They get up, they find a way through caffeine to get through their workday, but by the time they get home, the caffeine's wearing off, they're depleted, they've not slept enough, they're tired, and so they've positioned themselves to be weak at a moment where they need to be strong. And what would help them is probably to figure out a way to get more sleep. And that might enable them and free them up to love their children more. So I don't want to deny heart issues, but I also don't want to deny the significance of the body. And that's why we pull in things into our discipleship, like helping men get sleep, or helping men avoid too much sugar, things that you don't typically think about, but that can take a big toll if you want to really live out your life holistically to the glory of God. Another distinctive, we focus on external motivation, not internal motivation. The human will is made of glass. It's fragile. It breaks so easily. If you as a man are trying to rely upon willpower to do anything, especially as important as your spiritual life, then you are being foolish right now. The motivation that works is not just individually writing down resolutions. It's extrinsic motivation. Now, what do I mean by extrinsic motivation? Let me give you some examples. Our baseline program, our 12-week CT12 program that guys sign up for, if they sign up for it, they have to actually sign a covenant agreement that says that they've read through, they understand what's in the program, and that they are going to do their best to do these things. And they write their name, and that might just sound like another kind of resolve. It's not. For a man to write his name down with a pen, that actually, it's not like ticking an agreement box, for some iTunes agreement. It still means something, and it means something to those men. They think more deeply about what they're engaging in. They feel more committed. It gives me the leverage to say, hey, look, you want out right now, but you signed this. Do you really want out, or do you want to actually continue along the track that you said that you wanted before? to walk along. Another form of extrinsic motivation. If you've ever tried to have adults memorize scripture, maybe you've done it in a Sunday school class where there's an option, you can go memorize a verse and come back, and people come back the next week and you say, hey, did anybody do their homework? And raise your hand if you did, and maybe one hand goes up and everybody says, well, okay, that's all right, we'll just try again next week. Nothing happens. Now, if you have a small group and guys have to memorize 2 verses, and they show up the first or the second week, and you say, hey, John, in the back, you go first, stand up and recite your verses for everybody. Now, Steve also sits up real straight because he realizes, oh my goodness, I've got to actually recite things to show up here. And they might waffle their way through that week, but I guarantee the next week, every man that shows up is going to have his verses, maybe not rock solid, but they're going to be near perfect, because that shame, it's a powerful motivator. And I think those ways of finding extrinsic motivation where the program itself keeps men doing the things they want to get done, they know they need to get done, but struggle on their own to have the willpower to get done, those are assistants and those are helps that we've got to make use of. A last thing I would say that's distinctive is that Cross-Training Ministries is built around a model of spiritual fitness. Again, it's not just that cafeteria idea of, well, a little of this and a little of that. It's like, well, what are the things that are most powerful? The things that if you really are willing to put time into these things, they're either most relevant given the contemporary circumstance, or they've just worked for men best in the past. And that's why, for example, we do things like memorize scripture. The guys that go through cross-training programs, in most cases, at the outset, they think, I can't do this. Either I'm not smart enough or I'm too old, or I've never done it before, because a lot of young guys haven't ever really memorized anything. And what I try to tell them is, go read Psalm 1, because Psalm 1 makes it really plain. There are only 2 types of people in this world. There are some, if you look behind me, there's a live oak tree. This is a massive tree. This tree is an old tree. It's probably weathered who knows how many scores of hurricanes. And you can either be a tree, or I could pick up this leaf on my leg, and I could blow this with a breath across the ground. And so you're either a leaf or a tree. What do you want to be? And of course, all of us would want to be a tree. And what does God say makes the difference? It's the man who meditates on his word day and night. And this purpose of memorization is it always leads to meditation. If you take that time, then you're chewing on it constantly when you're in the car, when you're walking. And so we memorize scripture, we read, because men need perspective. It's too confusing in the 21st century to just rely upon other people's convictions. And the best way to gain perspective is to read, and to read widely, and to make time, and to make that a practice. We worship, you have to go to church. You need to be a part of that reality. And church is one of these things that you get out what you put in. It's like a workout. Anybody can go into a gym and can go through some motions, but if you don't put anything into it, you're really not going to benefit. And so we want to talk to guys, how do you actually begin to sing when other people sing? How do you listen attentively to the Word of God? How do you engage in public prayer? How do you engage and really understand the wonder, the gift of communion, of sacraments? We want to set guys up so they can really benefit from that gathered worship. We make sure guys, prayer is a fundamental part. We help guys with self-control against some of the bodily discipline elements, and then friendship. Men need men. Men need Christian men. Men need men who want the same sort of spiritual growth that they want. And so, there's a model of spiritual fitness so that the components that we're putting into programs, it's not random, it's not haphazard, but it's all governed toward specific objectives. Now, where does all this lead? This is really what I want to talk to you about, is just the direction of Cross-Training Ministries. I'm really excited about our baseline kind of level 1 program. It's called CT12. And it is a 12-week program that really focuses in 3 areas. Simple routines, bodily discipline, and spiritual friendship. And like I said earlier, it's not an intensive thing. I'm telling guys, okay, 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening. Go to church, give me 30 minutes on Sunday. Now we're going to cut some stuff out, but what's going to happen is because you're cutting some stuff out, you're actually going to get more time back than you put in, because we're going to talk about digital minimalism. We're going to get you a plan for your phone usage. We're going to help you put some personal thresholds on what degree and how much can you enjoy things like television. It's a freedom, but also how do you set a limit so that it doesn't just become an endless amusement. And so we're going to help you set up a lifestyle. So again, you're free to pursue discipleship, and we're going to do that with other guys. Now, that's a 12-week program. It's something I've been piloting with groups for the last 6 months. There have been guys that have done it, are doing it in the U.S., in the U.K., other parts of the world. Some groups that I lead, guys who've been through that are now leading groups. One of the things I love about this program is it's so easy to use and to multiply. It doesn't rely upon somebody having been through seminary. At the point you've been through, you've memorized the scripture, you've read the short books, you understand the program. You can take a set of guys and say, hey, let's do this together. And I think you can be situated to actually do some discipleship. Now, of course, 12 weeks is just 12 weeks. No real change can happen that fast. And so that program has to lead into something more. Now, what happens with CT12 is guys begin to, one, realize they can do things they didn't know they could do, like memorize scripture and read books. But secondly, they've begun to establish a lifestyle so that they've already got those tracks in place. And so now it's not a scary thought to memorize 2 verses a week. And so you can just scale things up. So you move from memorizing Colossians 3, which gives such a beautiful blueprint of maturity, something most men lack. And then you say, okay, let's go a little deeper. Now we're going to go to the topical memory system. And instead of 24 verses, we're going to do 60 verses. But it's going to give you an even richer framework of discipleship. And those books, you read some short books initially on getting you excited about pursuing God, pursuing holiness. Well, now we're going to focus a little bit more on competence. We're going to have you read some books on some short books, 150 pages or less, but on key areas of spiritual life that every guy needs to think about. Things like marriage, fatherhood, prayer, money. And we're going to add in a few other things that maybe you've never tried before. Just a short Friday fast to help you remember those hours that Christ was on the cross, and to be able to think again about what it means to say no in order to say yes to better things. So from CT12, guys don't stop there, but they then move on into a longer program that continues the same system, the same sort of disciplines, but deepens them. And in the future, I'll add other layers that guys can pursue. But where ultimately are we going? At the end of the day, one of the core convictions, for me at least, of discipleship is that there are no shortcuts to spiritual growth, that it is a long road that leads to maturity. And so, no system, no program in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years, even 10 years is going to be able to produce, some sort of spiritual leader. That just doesn't happen. So ultimately what you're doing is you're pointing men down a longer road, getting them started, but what Cross-Training Ministries ultimately seeks to accomplish is to help men shift their identity. Identity is one of the most empowering or most powerful forms of motivation. It doesn't matter what you're thinking of, athletics, or if someone's trying to become a musician, at the point that they change how they view themselves. So if the child says, you know what, I'm a musician, that's the child, in study after study, that doesn't just take 3 years of lessons and gives up. It's the one that continues to take lessons and practice and becomes the actual musician. And so what we're ultimately wanting to do is to help men eventually see themselves differently. So it's not just a matter of, okay, do this program or you memorize scripture, but where men see themselves as, look, I am a man of the word. I value and treasure the word of God, meditating on the word, memorizing the word, studying the word, hearing the word. And when that word is absent from my life, I feel like something deep is missing. We want men to see themselves, I am a man of prayer. That, there are a whole lot of things I cannot do in my lifetime. But if at the end of my lifetime, I don't have a rich and a regular and an intimate life of prayer with God, something has been wasted. And we could talk about other things, but it's getting men eventually to that place where they see themselves differently and begin to make choices based on that sense of who they are. It's rare to find a discipleship ministry that accomplishes that. But the only one I can think of in living memory is the Navigators. If you were a Navigator 50 years ago, that meant something. It meant that you probably had memory cards in your pocket. It meant that you were engaged in Bible study, that you had somebody on your mind that you were discipling and seeking to witness to. And it's been a while, though, since men have had the opportunity to be a part of a ministry that really changed how they thought about themselves. So how do we ultimately seek to do this? Well, these are some of the bigger goals of cross-training ministry. One of them is I want to have an annual cross-training conference. Not in a single location, probably at least one in the UK, one in the US, but maybe some elsewhere as well. But a conference where men have the chance to hear about a heroic life of a Christian believer. Chesterton, the great apologist of the Christian faith and the great writer, he talked about how, Christ is the sun, but he's so brilliant, he's so luminous that sometimes it's easier to see his light reflected off of the moon, off lesser figures. And that's what happens sometimes in the life of certain Christians, is you see something, truth be told, it's something of Christ, something of his holiness, but it's reflected off them in a way that's particularly compelling. And I want men to have the chance to hear the lives of other men that will stir them up with godly passion. A lot of men have never heard of someone like Dawson Trotman. But I guarantee if you sat through a weekend conference with Dawson Trotman, on the other side, you would be hungering to memorize more of God's Word, to go out and make disciples of other men. A lot of modern men have never heard of people like Hudson Taylor. And I guarantee if you went through a full Saturday just thinking about Hudson Taylor's life on the other side, you'd be thinking, wow, where have I been missing the opportunity to trust God, to see how faithful he is, and to give him praise for how merciful and attentive he is to the needs. I'd love to see more of his power displayed in my life. And we could go on and on with different types of figures, but I want men to have compelling examples, compelling heroes in their mind that really model for them what spiritual maturity looks like. I'd like men to have, once they go through these layers of the program, to give them the opportunity to have some quarterly BHAGs, some big, hairy, audacious goals, as Jim Collins calls them. So often we do less because of a shortage of imagination. Whenever, if you've ever been in a workout setting with someone who's a lot more fit than you are, when you show up to work out with them, often they write out workouts and you think, that's impossible. Nobody could possibly do that, because you'd never think to, but then you do it with them, and maybe you don't do it as fast as they do, but you end up being able to achieve things that you would never even consider otherwise. And, Christian men, we don't have many things in our life that would say, for example, over this year we're going to memorize the Sermon on the Mount. But what a noble, what a wonderful aspiration that would be, and how powerful to have that word engraved upon our heart. And so for men that have been through the program, to give them that opportunity. Eventually, I do hope to build a web platform where guys can continue to be fed information regarding these core elements of the mission, the identity that we're creating with cross-training ministries. And there'll be some training opportunities and some other things that evolve. But really where I want to end is just opportunities for you to partner with cross-training ministries. There's a variety of things. I think this is a ministry that this is not just for a short term. This is a ministry that I hope to be developing through the whole duration of my life. And so how can you get involved? Well, some of you are already financial partners. And my encouragement, my desire would be that you would continue to be invested in that capacity. But some of you have also been a part of different programs. And, my earnest desire would be that you would actually think about things like CT12. If you've been through this, participating in other programs that we're going to be unveiling in the coming months, and ultimately thinking about, is this a program that you could use with other men? I would love for you guys to be influencers. The TED stage, one of the things I do like about them is they have that tagline, ideas worth spreading. And there are some ideas worth spreading. And I think some of the things that I've talked to you about, areas where discipleship is often, where it succumbs to various deficiencies, but also some of the distinctives of cross-training ministries. These are things that are worth talking about. To go to your pastor and say, the men's breakfast is great, but here's what it doesn't provide. And so how do we enable men, again, to, for example, adjust some of their lifestyle, adjust how they think about their phone or whatever else it is, so that they're really situated and prepared to be able to pursue Christ more wholeheartedly. And guys, again, this conference is something I do hope to begin sooner rather than later. Now you probably hear this noise in the background, so I don't want to stretch this out any longer. But I'm excited about where God is taking this ministry. I hope you get excited as well. Stay in touch, whether you're in the U.S., whether you're in the U.K., or elsewhere. And let's keep thinking, let's keep praying, let's keep partnering together, and see if we can create a ministry that gives men that opportunity to be free to pursue Christ.